Fight fans, fight fans, fight fans. This is Kurt Deville with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I am live once again to discuss a very serious question. Let's see who is the first on the chat. Comics legend, counterpunch to you. I think Joshua and Wilder should fight, and they both retire the same night. Comics legends coming in with dropping those bars and that knowledge. Graham Pisspot, biggest hype job ever. Damn. Mama Lou, hello. Counterpunch to you. Member in the building. Why does it send notifications out, yet when you jump on, there's still 30 minutes to wait? You know what, Mama Lou? I've been saying that forever. I just thought that. I said that to myself like a few days ago. I'm like, why when like my boy Graham comes on and then I'll get a notification and you're like, cool, he's on live. But then when you click on it, it's like he'll be live in 29, minutes. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, why would you send it in 30 minutes? That doesn't help you, because the way our attention spans have been shrinked and minimized, and the things that we have to do, or the things that we feel we have to do throughout the day. All right. That 30 minutes, you could be doing a lot more. You're not going to sit there for that damn countdown. You're going to do everything else. And by the time the actual video or live show starts, more than likely you'll be on to some other shit that requires you to be occupied for whatever time you're back at work or whatever. So yeah, I don't see that either. Mic check. Yeah, I never understood that too. Tyson Fury has changed his name back from the daddy to Tyson Fury. Hello and hi. What's up, my brother Kurt? Salute Quan, big guns in the building. If Fraud Fury refuses to fight AJ, then I won't be mad at AJ for retiring. At least I've noticed after Fury saw Usyk KO Triple D, Fury hasn't said a word about fighting Usyk again. Well, I don't know about fighting him again. I think he did hint that he wanted to fight him, but he also wanted to fight him only in terms of being in the UK. He no longer wanted to fight him in Saudi Arabia. And again, like I've told everyone regarding this topic of Tyson Fury, if I was Turki Al-Sheikh, I would be offended that he said that. I would be more of like, okay, well, what does he mean by that? Like, why does it have to be in the UK? You know what I mean? Why does it, you got something against the UK? You had nothing against the UK when you were fighting Francis Ngannou. You know what I'm saying? Or you were doing the exhibition there in COVID season. You had nothing against the Saudi Arabia then. He had nothing to say about Saudi Arabia until he lost. So if I'm Turki Al-Sheikh, I would feel offended on that. I'm like, well, what do you mean? My money is my money not green, or you can't get a fair shake here. What's the deal? So I don't know. And then it's Turki Al-Sheikh that actually wants to, to push this fight along with a third fight, which warrants nothing. It's just as irrelevant as the third fight with Wilder. It didn't really matter to a lot of people, including me, until I saw it, though. Don't get me wrong. When I saw Tyson Fury versus Wilder 3, I was very, very impressed. You know what I mean? And it wasn't because I was happy. I was impressed because of the battle between the two combatants. So I think that night, if you are a fan of boxing, you could appreciate both guys trying to do their best to win. You know what I mean? Tyson knocked out Wilder in the 11th round, but Wilder had his moments to gain respect from the people because he did go out on his shield, which that's why I do support the guys or the people that are victims of being stopped by the ref or something is quickly stopped, a fight like that to a magnitude or whatever. You don't know what that fighter has left. And it's up to that fighter, unfortunately, or it should be, to stop the fight or not. If not, what are we doing? We're taking that away from this fighter. So Wilder got his wish. Wilder got exactly what he wanted. He wanted to show people like, look, I can beat this kid. I can knock this guy out, but I came up short. And I came up short simply based off the fact that I wasn't a better man that night. But it wasn't because Tyson Fury had loaded gloves, or my trainer was out to get me, or the referee, was in on it, or my water was spiked, or my costume was heavy. It didn't have anything to do with that. So, it proved and it showed a lot of things. And, believe it or not, people talk about the Wilder Fury fiasco, and and we talk about the ayahuasca and stuff like that just for Wilder for a minute, but we don't think about, and we don't talk enough about, the possibility of Wilder may be mentally disturbed based on the fight outcome of the trilogy fight. Do you think Wilder would be the way Wilder is now if it wasn't for the knockout in the 11th round by Tyson Fury? He may just been that dude that couldn't handle that defeat because he believed wholeheartedly that God was going to deliver Tyson Fury, to him, and he was going to get the victory based on the fact that he was done so wrongly because he was cheated in the second fight. And because of that, he was going to be that guy that preemed victor. But that didn't happen. You see what I mean? So that might have upset Wilder more than anything else. So that's just something to think about. But back to the comments, the daddy. Apparently, Quan Big Guns, apparently Yoka and AJ are in talks. Yeah, they're in talks. I wouldn't want that fight for AJ, because I think AJ at this point of time, he's in the last leg of his career. How many tune-up fights do you think you need? You know what I mean? He's a prime fighter. He gets paid for what he does. So put him in there with somebody that can fight. Put him in there with somebody that's about that life. Put him there in there with someone that's hungry. Now I don't expect them to put him in with like Caballero or nobody like that. They're not going to do that. But put him in there with somebody that is on the list, that's in the, either if he's young, Jared Anderson, perfect. Give Jared Anderson an opportunity to make some money, but at the same time, give AJ an opportunity to fight somebody that can actually box. Not saying Tony Yoka can't. It's just Tony Yoka folds under pressure. He folds under pressure. I've watched him fight. He gets, he gets overpowered. He's kind of like on that junior five level. You know what I mean? Probably a step, like a notch above junior five. Now Junior Five, needless to say, has his own YouTube channel. So guys, subscribe to Junior Five, And I said before, I included 10 years from now, because how it goes. Rubbish. Vitali got stopped by middleweight Chris Bird. Well, to be fair, Hand of Doom, it was because of an injury. He injured, I think, his right hand. He tore something in the fight, and then they stopped it. I don't want to see Anderson versus AJ. Makes no sense for either fighter. It's a lose-lose for both. Well, I would rather see, I know why, Quan Big Guns. You would rather see him fight Deontay Wilder, but Deontay Wilder, I don't think it's fair to him. You may agree or not, but I don't think he's ready for a fight with AJ. You could say, hey, well, AJ got knocked out his last fight, and then Wilder, got knocked out by Zhilei Zhang, and then he just had a tune-up fight. So why don't you throw them in there with each other? Well, if AJ knocks him out, don't say shit. But what's going to happen is he wasn't ready for that yet. Hand of Garbage Lewis got knocked out by a journeyman. Who was the journeyman? Are you talking about Mark McCall? Oliver McCall. I'm sorry, Martin McCall. Jesus. Oliver McCall. No, Oliver McCall was not a journeyman when he got knocked out. Sorry. That was the totally different Oliver McCall. That was before the drugs. That was before whatever. Oliver McCall was not a journeyman when he knocked out Lennox Lewis. You have to understand and respect people. There's levels in boxers' lives and careers. Okay. Just because they may or get to a result that they are no longer the fighter that they was doesn't take away the fighter that they were. Okay. So you have to understand that there's a difference. So you could been 20-0 with 15 KOs at one point, and you were kicking everybody's ass. You knew no defeat, but then it could have came to a point where you lost every fight after that, and then people look at you totally different because you haven't won a fight since whenever, and then you're called all this, that, and the other. But at that time that you was kicking ass, that was the time that you were kicking ass. Respect the time frame, okay? Like Adam Kalnacki. Adam Kalnacki was 20-0, 15 KOs. Now he's 20-0 with 4 losses. No, he's 20-4 with 15 KOs. But you can't take the 15 knockouts away. And you can't take the 20 wins away either. He just hasn't won since the Helenius first throwdown, and he lost. Okay. Then he lost again to Helenius. Then he lost again to another fighter. Then he lost again. So, it's boxing, man. It happens. And then really Adam Kalnacki was that guy that they were really looking at as a potential for the subject at hand, Anthony Joshua. Anyone who claims I can't. It's crazy. Every time I get to reading something, it shifts. Was a journeyman is a straight up casual. Tom McCall was a journeyman. Well, yeah, they thought, people think that because they don't know. They look at the guy that was crying in the ring with Lennox Lewis, the guy that had a mental breakdown before he even entered the ring. He was crying before he entered the ring. Don't know what was wrong with him. Maybe it was, I don't know. I don't even know. Oliver McCall actually is making a comeback. So if I had to guess, it was drugs. If I had to guess, it was just drugs. It was drugs. It was, substance abuse. Like my aunt says, drinking and drugging, right? That's what it was. So, because if he's in his 50s, he's like late 50s, because he's up there with like Tyson, and because he used to be Mike Tyson's sparring partner. And I employ people to watch Tyson and McCall sparring sessions. They are off the chain. They are very, very good sparring matchups, man. You have to look at those clips. You have to look at those videos, because McCall was giving Tyson the business, bro. And this was like early 90s. You know what I mean? And the crazy thing is, McCall, that's that McCall that knocked out Lennox Lewis. So if you want to see someone in their peak, you know what I'm saying? That's what I want everyone to do, right? If we're going to learn anything about boxing, start understanding everyone has a peak. You know what I mean? Everyone has a peak. Everybody has that, you have that beginning stage. I'm a beginner. I'm just a prospect, then you graduate to a contender, and then that contender level gets you to a whole nother level. If you make it to the championship status, so the contenders are the people that are potentially can become champions. And I just say, look at people when they're at their best. And I think you can appreciate each and every fighter. Sometimes though, it's harder than others because some fights could go either way. Swing rounds are a mother sucker, people. It's a mother sucker when it comes to fights, Loma, it's easy to say ridiculous things like that, Quan. A lot of 90 fighters would beat Usyk. Yeah, that's an easy thing to say. And what people don't understand is Alexander Usyk is not a fighter that you think he is. If you see, it's either you think he's this type of fighter or you wish he's this type of fighter. Alexander Usyk has showed us that he is top tier. So an all-time great means in any generation, he can be a problem or possibly a champion. Now, I'm not going to say nobody could beat him. I'm not going to say he can beat everybody. What I am saying about Alexander Usyk is Alexander Usyk, okay, could be very successful and compete in any era successfully. That's what I will say, because he's that good. He's not going to fall for things that AJ fell for. If you notice the last fight he had with Dubois, Danny Dubois threw a right hand, and there was no way. And the way he threw the right hand, he's programmed not to get hit with shots like that. You got to understand it. That's programming. That's just repetitious. Oh shit, here's the right. You know, and then, bow, because it's crazy, because he was able, and he showed Danny Dubois what to do when a backhand or the rear punch is thrown, where to go, and he moved. You let that go there. Now let me throw a right hook. Let me throw an overhand. But Daniel Dubois didn't learn that lesson, did he? He got caught. Bow! Oh, knocked his mouthpiece out and everything. It was a nasty connect. It was a nasty connect. Nasty connect. Frank Bruno would beat Oliver. I'm sure Usyk would. I don't know about that shit either. Frank Bruno versus Oliver McCall, that would be a good fight. But I can recall Oliver McCall being a lot quicker. See, anybody that can catch Tyson the way he caught Tyson, because Tyson's ability was not just power, it was his ability to defend himself with his guard up and throw punches. Move, weave, side to side, coming forward, peekaboo, got you, right? Frank Bruno didn't have that. Oliver McCall would catch Frank Bruno, or Frank Bruno would catch Oliver McCall. So, that is a fight that, but just this trips me out, man. Oh, man, he would beat it. Frank would beat Oliver. Would he? Kurt, Fury better, bigger, faster than Bruno. Fury would school McCall. But what I know about, what did we learn about Tyson Fury? Oh, it's now the daddy, okay? What did we learn about Tyson Fury? We learned that smaller fighters give him problems. He's admitted that on Joe Rogan, because he was there I know he was there once as a guest on the show, on his podcast. And he admitted that, hey, smaller fighters give me the most problems. See, one thing about Tyson Fury may be this, that, and the other, and then some. But one thing about Tyson, he will at times tell the truth. You just got to pay attention to him. Tyson's game is, he says so many different things. You don't really know what to pick and choose to take serious or not, But sometimes he does tell you exactly what's true, 100%. And I believe what he said at that time was true. Smaller fighters, shorter fighters give him problems. I think someone like Chris Bird would give Tyson Fury problems, because he's smaller, he's quick, he's elusive, he's defensive minded, but he also is able to throw punches in certain angles, and he's a southpaw. Marciano beat Joe Louis. It's as impressive as if Atoma beats Usyk. No, it's not. And I'm going to explain why. Lord Zed, the reason why that wouldn't be as impressive, it wouldn't be impressive as all. Matter of fact, let me keep it a buck. It wasn't impressive for Rocky Marciano to knock out Joe Louis. Joe Louis was like 38 or 39 years old, but understand that time frame was a lot different. Why? because you had fighters fighting multiple rounds, not just 12 or 15, but more than that. Okay, the standard was 15, but I think this was in the 40s and 50s. Rocky Marciano was an undefeated fighter at the time, but he was also hella young. He didn't even want to fight Joe. He didn't want to fight Joe Louis. Joe Louis was his hero. So let's understand that. While we want to, some people love to go on racist tangents and agendas. No, Rocky Marciano did not want to fight Joe Louis. Joe Louis had to come back to the sport because he was a golfer, but he couldn't afford to pay his bills, to take care of his family from golf. Do you know why? Because the U.S. government robbed him. They took all of his money. They garnished it illegally. Yeah. The U.S. government did that. And what he did was he had to go back to fighting. And when he went back to fighting, he found out, I'm not the same fighter. He fights Rocky Marciano. He gets knocked out, gets knocked through the ropes. Okay, needless to say, but he needed the money. He didn't go back because he wanted to show people that he was the greatest or the best or this, that, and the other. No, he went back because he had to. Joe Louis had to go back to the sport because Joe Louis needed money. Needless to say, it's the Brown Bomber. The third loss he had was to Rocky Marciano. You know what I mean? Someone like with 3 losses, with that many. Let's look up Joe Louis for a minute. Joe Louis Barrow. Okay, so here we go. Okay, that was his last fight with Rocky Marciano, but the man had he had 66 wins, 52 by KO, and 3 losses. And if you want to talk about somebody with a resume, okay, Ezra Charles, Jersey Joe Walcott 2 times, Billy Conn, Buddy Bear, Max Bear. That's the dude, the killer. You know what I mean? He beat them all. He beat Max Bear twice. Okay. He beat Max Smelling on the second end because he was knocked out. That was his first loss, needless to say. But guys like he beat Max Barrett now 33 times. Primo Carnero, the guy that what the hell is this? No, he didn't fight Jack Dempsey. Jack Dempsey was done at that time, bro. That was a way different time zone, time frame, bro. He wouldn't fight then. But like Joe Louis was a beast. Hold of garbage. No ref ever saved Fury. Fury, okay. Fury would probably have outboxed McCall, but McCall definitely was no bum. It would have definitely been a 50-50 fight because McCall hit hard. McCall did hit hard. Ask Joe Louis. I mean, Lennox Lewis. Ask Lennox. Yeah, he chinned Lennox. And, Lennox, got up from that. He just wasn't stable. So the ref stopped it, and Lennox was going, But back to AJ, AJ stopped, they're talking about retirement. He does these riddles and he's talking about what, Ruth made a good point. There has been no White versus Atoma press conference. White might pull out. I don't know. I mean, I think with that should be an issue with overall promotion. If you want to point the finger at anyone, don't point it at White right now. You need to point it at Frank Warren. Why isn't there any scheduling? I mean, it's a very good question. Shout out to Jay Roos. Prime Luis Ortiz versus Oliver McCall. I don't know. because I think Ortiz was a sabotage fighter, for a lot of reasons, which I don't even really have time to go into right now. Then in the rematch, Lewis knocked Hasim out. Yeah, he did. But to be fair, he didn't knock out Oliver McCall. They stopped that fight because Oliver didn't want to fight. He didn't want to fight, bro. He shouldn't even been in the ring, But no, I don't. I think that's something you need to ask Frank. Shit, it's his promotions. It's Queensberry, so ask Queensberry. Ask Frank and George, his son. Ask those guys. Hasim was a journeyman. Hasim Rahman was not a journeyman. Hasim Rahman became a journeyman by the time he fought like guys like Alexander Povetkin, but he was not a journeyman when he fought Lennox Lewis. Are you crazy? No, he wasn't. In fact, Hasim Rahman, I will never forget. Hasim Rahman, I think, was 24-0 with 18 KOs. He goes in there against David Tua in 1997 on the undercard of Pretty Boy Floyd Mayweather and Angel Manfredi, right? And the crazy thing is, I used to record these fights. And I used to watch them over and over again. And Rahman took on David Tua. Now, Hasim Rahman was The Rock before Dwayne The Rock Johnson. They used to call him Hasim The Rock Rahman, right? And, you learn a lot, from commentators and backstories about fighters. And the crazy thing is, it's like Hasim Rahman was an undefeated fighter, and he was simply outboxing Tua, and he was a lot bigger than Tua. And we learned a lot about David Tua at that point. I mean, pretty much we knew David Tua. I mean, he was kind of lackadaisical. He took rounds off. You could outpoint David. He really didn't have a large punch output in these rounds. I mean, he threw shots. They were dangerous when he threw them, but there were few in between. Hasim Rahman boxed him, just simple basics, keep your hands up, look out for the big hook. When David Tua gets you in the corner, walk him back to the center ring. The fight was pretty easy to score. Hasim Rahman was beating David Tua. I think until the end of the 8th round, the bell rang, and I think that referee, Victor Durakulich or something like that, he Tua hit Rahman, because what happened, Tua hit Rahman with a body shot. And this was back when David Tua was with Ronnie Shields. And Ronnie Shields, was that he was more hype. He's like, Ronnie Shields, he's kind of cool because he's older now. But Ronnie Shields back then, bro, that was like, geez, 28 years ago. And he was saying like, yo, listen, David, you got to do this. Go to the body, throw the uppercut upstairs and go to the body, rip up body, bring his hands downstairs and then go upstairs. You have to do something, Tyson. I mean, Tua, you have to do something. David, you have to make this work. David, come on, listen to me. And Tua hit Hasim Rahman with a 1-2. And you heard him. You heard Rahman. Because he knocked the wind out of him. And then he caught David. He caught Rahman on the ropes. And Rahman was sitting on the ropes. And then Tua, after the bell rang, Tua ripped off a left hook. Caught Hasim Rahman. And he hit him, and Rahman, and it was clearly after the bell. Now, the controversy was, right, he caught Rahman, kind of staggered back to his corner, but then they let the next round 9, go the way, I guess, normally, without, question, which was weird because that was a clear foul. They should have took 5 minutes for Hasim. But they didn't. They didn't take that. So what ended up happening, David Tua went at him. And what it was, referee Vic Drakulich, I think I'm pronouncing that right. stopped the fight, and it went ape shit. And because Rahman was moving, he was bobbing some shots, he was missing some shots. David was ripping these shots off. You know what I mean? And yeah, please, Strangeness, you need to watch that fight. It was a very interesting fight. And then they stopped it, and then David to a one or whatever. And Hassan was like, what the hell I was missing? The damn ref, man, look at that ref. You know what I mean? That ref, man, you know, because what happened, he pushed the ref, like, man, get off me. You know what I mean? Because the ref was like, whoo, you know how the ref jump in and they want to be the saviors. They want to be little baby Jesus when it comes to these damn fights, when it comes to stopping fights, right? So that's what happened in that fight. And it was very controversial. But we see back then, David Tua was the mandatory. He was the mandatory. And who would have won that fight would have became the mandatory. And people talking about karma ain't real and this, that, and the other. David Tua was never a champion, not a heavyweight world champion. He was never that. He was a contender. And he was the number one contender because he beat Hassan Rahman based on that performance, but it was controversial, right? So David Tua goes on to fight Lewis. 3 years later, 25 pounds added to David Tua, and he gets his ass whooped by Lennox Lewis easy. But what happened with Rahman? Rahman eventually got his opportunity, and he hit pay dirt because he knocked out Lennox Lewis in South Africa, becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. So the people talking about Rahman was a journeyman, bro, go just research your history about people before you open your mouth, because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You just don't know. See, when you don't know about fighters and their story and their history and what they've accomplished, it's easy for you to say, oh, well, that fighter was a bum. Based on what? Fighters get old and then they get their ass whooped. That's how it's really supposed to go. Because that's how it's supposed to go. It's supposed to go like this. You're very good or you're very great. You become champion. You defend the championship. You might lose. Then you get it back. Then you keep going. Then you get past your prime. Then you get your ass whooped. Then you retire. That's how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to pass that torch at one point. At one point in your career, you notice or someone makes you notice that you're no longer good. You're no longer the fighter that you used to be 4 or 5 years ago. You're not that dude anymore. Wear and tear or father time, knocking at your door, whatever you want to call it. That's what happens in boxing. Okay? That's what happens. Then you pass that torch, willingly or unwillingly. More than likely it's unwillingly, because nobody willingly wants to get their ass whooped. Because, a warrior wants to go out on his what? Shield. That's a reason why they call it that analogy. I want to go out on my shield because I'm in battle. Okay? You just don't have a sword. You have these. But you get your ass whooped, and guess what? You pass the torch. But then somebody that don't know shit about you says, oh, you're a bum. No, that's unacceptable, bro. It's very, 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 very disrespectful. So remember that before we start saying shit like, oh, he was a bum. Now you can say overrated, underrated, okay. But you have to have some knowledge or a reason for rhyme to say that bullshit, okay? See, we need to learn and educate ourselves about boxing because a lot of people don't know about it. Sometimes some people, casual fans alike, like the idea of somebody getting their ass knocked out. They like the highlight reels. Needless to say, that's why people come to YouTube. You know what I mean? They like to see someone get knocked out. They don't want to see the 9 rounds it took for the person to get knocked out. They want to see someone get their head knocked out, their head bounced off the canvas from getting caught with a shot that concussed them more than likely, that put great cerebral damage upon them, right? People want to see that shit. Go watch the fight. He wouldn't have even beat up Ataya or Bird, who are cruiserweights today. Well, Bird probably should have fought at cruiserweight. And Jaya Ataya, who knows? But understand, Hassan Rahman actually could be a pretty decent fighter now based on what we have. Think about Wilder. Are we talking skill-wise? Shit, he knocked out Lennox Lewis. He got a good game plan. He kept his guard up. You follow the game plan, you know, and you patch up the inconsistencies or the bad habits that you have until you execute the game plan. See, there's a difference between Lennox Lewis versus Rockman 1 and versus Rockman versus Lennox Lewis 2. Lewis had a game plan, and it wasn't to star in the motion picture Ocean's 11 with Vladimir Klitschko either. It was to knock Hasim Rahman's ass back and take all his belts at the same time. That's what his objective was. So he knew, oh, you know, you got lucky. And one thing that made me respect Lennox Lewis from that, Lennox Lewis came out and did exactly that. Bars. Lennox Lewis showed him, yo, you got lucky, and I'm going to show you who I am now. Big up, England, big up. You know you got lucky. You know you got lucky, right? And then he went out there and knocked Hasim out. And I'm thinking round 3 or 4 in the middle of the ring with a classic. I haven't seen a combination like Lennox threw to Rahman in a very long time from someone that big. See, one thing about Lennox Lewis was a guy. I know I'm talking about everybody but AJ, but Lennox Lewis was a guy that not only was he huge, big, powerful, but he was also skilled, and he was very, very elusive for his size. He didn't dance around like Tyson did, Fury did, but Lennox Lewis was big, and he was physical, and he could move, and he had speed. He had adequate speed for someone that big. Lennox Lewis threw that shot, smack, bang. And I was like, oh my God. He threw that left hook and that right behind it like it was just. And he caught Rahman and opened up the cut that Rahman has on his face. If you don't know, fun fact about Hasim Rahman for a minute. Hasim Rahman got in a bad car accident, automobile accident, which he had like 60 stitches, right? Or more on his face. And that's why he had this big scar. Lennox opened that shit up. It started bleeding. I was like, oh my God. Lennox Lewis was the truth, bro. Claudius Fist did the dancing across his opponent's heads. It did. Chicago East 60th Street, a place where Sandan could never go. Wherever Sandan lives, I would walk his street like I am the king, and he couldn't do anything about it. Okay. Pump Kingle. I watched Usyk versus Witherspoon. It looked like Usyk held back to extend the fight. Maybe. I know he did that in the Tony Bellew fight. And then here's the thing. It was kind of challenging to get your ass peppered by Tony Bellew at the same time by holding back. Because a lot of times you hold back until somebody makes you not hold back. Pisses you off and makes you go all for go all in on them. So, yeah, it's definitely a gift. So he might have. But to keep it a buck, I was not impressed with that fight. Chaz Witherspoon fighting Alexander Usyk. When he came to heavyweight, first fight, I was not impressed. So if he was holding back, that would make a lot more sense because, you look at that fight, the first fight, Usyk versus Witherspoon, and you seen Witherspoon was able to get that right off. And I think what people need to understand and take from that fight was that and the Chisora fight that he could take shots from heavyweights. But if you do your research on Alexander Usyk fought at heavyweight before. He did it on a different platform. And I'm not talking about amateur. This was more like a fusion-like platform with the WSB, where he took on, and he fought more fights on the WBSB, needless to say. It wasn't just that one fight. But he ended up fighting Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce was 230 pounds at that time. He was 215. Those are heavyweights, people. So you can't say Usyk has no experience being a heavyweight. He was a heavyweight. He's fought at heavyweight. You know what I'm saying? He just campaigned at cruiserweight, became the champ, became the undisputed champ, won the tournament, all that, then went to heavyweight. But he's already been at heavyweight. That's like Artur Beterbiev going to cruiserweight, and everybody's like, damn, he's so awesome. Well, he knows what it's like to be a cruiserweight because he was once upon a time a cruiserweight. That's where he fought Alexander Usyk, where he dropped Alexander Usyk twice as a cruiserweight. Know your history. But I think that's what I'm here for, right? So you guys can learn something. Quan Small Guns, Quan Small Guns. You're just a Wilder keyboard warrior. Your hero can't fight. How can you? Who you think you fooling here? Uh-oh. We're starting to shit in the trenches, people. Straight punches are king. I can't object to that. Revelation TV. I want AJ to fight Effie before he retires so we know the true Nigerian boxing king. I think Effie retires AJ with a solid KO. You know something, though? That ain't a bad fight at all. In fact, that could be a very good fight. Effie Ajagba versus Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua versus Effie Ajagba. Nyjah versus Nyjah. Right? I think that fight should be in Africa. It has to be in Nigeria. That shit would sell, bro. If he wanted to do something historic, because see, if you guys can recall, Eddie Hearn, Anthony Joshua, Turki Al-Sheikh, before AJ was knocked out by Danny Dubois, that foiled and spoiled every damn thing. And it is sad, and I'll go into reasons why later. They were talking about AJ in Africa, AJ versus Wilder, but AJ in Africa. They wanted to have that fight, that venue in Africa. If you guys can remember that, it was in Africa they were talking about. We haven't heard that yet and since he got knocked out. But AJ should come back, and I think if he ends up fighting Effie Ajagba has said enough verbally, okay, on social media to whoever would listen, that he was like, listen, I'm the real Nyjah. He is not Nigerian. I am Nigerian. In his eyes all low. And he looks like he's one of those guys, and he kind of sounds a little bitter because he knew AJ was making all that damn money, and he's just kind of sitting there really not competing and comparing to AJ. But he knew that AJ's folks were from Nigeria, but he wanted to make it known that AJ wasn't Nigerian. So it was a low-key diss, right? Really, it wasn't even low-key. It was just a diss. It was a cultural diss. And that was one of the, that's something that could build a fight when you're talking about somebody what they ain't. You know what I mean? That's just like me fighting Frank Sanchez, and Frank Sanchez says, well, Kurt's not a real Cuban. He's American. I'm Cuban. I'm the real Cuban. He must have Cuban roots or whatever, but I'm the real Cuban. Estoy cubano real. Estoy cubano real. Pero él no. Él no cubano. Él no cubano. No. Él no cubano. Yo vivo en cubano. Sanchez versus Martin McCauley. That would be a good fight. AJ supported Effie in his fight with McCauley, which hurt McCauley's feelings. Yeah, he did. You know what I mean? And it just shows you, though, that, why wouldn't he? I mean, but here's the thing. AJ could have been a dick and said, you know what? I hope Martin McCauley knocks you out. I hope the last king of Scotland knocks you out, because he could have held what Effie Ajagba said in the past against him. He could have remembered that shit. Some people don't let stuff go. Some people hold on to stuff. And fortunately for Effie, he didn't hold on to it because he could have went against him. But I don't think that would have affected the outcome of that fight. I think that fight was compromised. Yes, I said it. Yes, I said it. I think the Effie Ajagba versus Martin McCauley fight was compromised. I think it was on the tape. There is no way that Effie boxed like he did, improved like he did, performed like he did, and had a draw to Martin McCauley. There were no knockdowns, so you can't say, well, Martin knocked him down, because there was nothing significant about that fight. You know what I mean? In fact, I'm going to look at it again. I'm going to watch that fight. But there was nothing significantly big that Mark McCauley did. He threw punches when Effie was on the ropes. And honestly, Effie could have and should have stayed off the ropes. Don't even give anybody anything to work with or to debate. He was bow, bow, and then moving away from his power hand, moving away from the fire, moving off the center line, coming in with that jab, throwing that right hand, and he was landing every time because Mark McCauley didn't move his head. Mark McCauley thought that he was this big wall that couldn't be penetrated. Pause. But guess what? He did penetrate those walls. Bars. They needed someone to close McCauley's mouth. I mean, McCauley, though, obviously, you know, it was a draw. That should have been a loss. It should have been an upset because we all thought that Effie Ajagba was going to get his robotic ass whooped. We thought that he was going to get whooped. We thought that he was going to get stomped, fried, refried, cooked. We thought that Mark McCauley was going to come in there and beat the hell out of Effie Ajagba, but that didn't happen, did it? No, it did not. It did not happen. That Congo wall, yeah. Facts. McCauley got lucky and got a gift like Saraz did with a draw against Carlos. That is true, but you know what? What we can say about Hamza Shiraz is he got his respect back, didn't he? He knocked Belanga's ass out, though, didn't he? And it wasn't really, people weren't really looking at that fight no more because Belanga overshadowed everyone and all that by his loud talk, his brashness. All that trash talk came back to bite him in the ass. Farting McCauley and his cement feet was outboxed by a robot. That robot was moving, sticking, and grooving. That's exactly what it was. Martin McCauley got beat, and then he started to complain about getting outboxed. If you notice, he was getting peppered because, you know, Effie was back, 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 and then he would move. And then, see, Martin was getting mad because Martin was fat, tired, slow, out of gas, and now he was starting to complain. But that's what you do when things are not going your way. If you notice, people start talking shit in the ring when things are not going their way. Jarrell Miller's good at it. You know, what's good? What's up? That's what Martin started doing. What's up, man? Fight me, man. Fight me, man. Because he wanted to come in. Andy Ruiz done the same thing. Come on. Fight me. Fight me, AJ. And AJ kept moving. Bitch. Started boxing his ass. Couldn't miss him. That's the same thing that was happening to Mark McCauley. Okay. Mark McCauley, I was so disappointed, but we were so enlightened by what we saw. And I'm glad we saw it because now we can understand. Mark McCauley is beatable. Mark McCauley doesn't like boxers. Now you understand the Mike Hunter fight. Because Mike Hunter he was the matador. McCauley was the bull. You know, and then Effie was fighting the fat bull. The fat bull that couldn't charge like a normal bull should or could. He didn't have that. Because his ass went to the Congo and ate too much. You know, I can recall that Joseph Parker made a good point the other day. Joseph Parker was like, Joseph Parker, he's funny. He's like, I just seen him with all this drip. You know, he had all these chains. He had all this fancy stuff on. I just, have a regular shirt, jeans, But he, he's not used to that money. So he had all these chains and, he was real flashy. But I didn't, I didn't do it. Maybe he's not used to that. He got the money. But he made sense. Yeah, he did do that. He was flashy. He was looking like one of those Congolese pimps. Got about 5, 6, hoes on the street turning tricks, right? Yeah. But, he was flashy because he couldn't do that. And a lot of people, needless to say, when they can't do something, and you can ask a lot of people, when you don't have, and then you overindulge. And that's exactly what Martin McCauley did. Like, I had a friend of mine that said he didn't really get a lot of toys when he was young. So when he got older, that's what he bought when he got money. He bought like remote control cars and shit like that, a lot of shoes and shit. So when you don't have and then you get, you're going to overindulge because you're going to try to make up for what you didn't have before. You know what I mean? And Martin McCauley, needless to say, did that. And when he did that, he not only just bought himself chains and all this bullshit, he ate like a fucking king. He ate like the last king of Scotland. Okay? That's what he did. So it is what it is. You know, Fart McCauley hates boxers but loves eateries. Yeah. He loves to eat, but you can tell, bro. I mean, you don't get that big, bro. Just and then, but here's what you need to understand about Martin McCauley and his trainer / manager. They pulled a con game on us. They did exactly what Andy Ruiz did. That's why he is the similarities between Andy and Martin, bro. Andy and Martin. The boxing adventures of Andy and Martin. Because they've done such. And then see, here's the thing. At least let's give Andy credit. At least Andy Ruiz became the undisputed first of his kind Mexican unified heavyweight champion of the world. At least Andy did that. Andy upset the world. This was the biggest upset probably since Tyson Douglas. Yeah. This was probably that big because people thought, man, AJ coming over here that was embarrassing though. We have to understand AJ coming over to Madison Square Garden, where Muhammad Ali in 1971 lost to Joe Frazier, right? He loses in Madison Square Garden. And I was trying to market, hey, well, Muhammad Ali lost in the ring too, his first loss, but he never came back. But he got his ass whooped by Andy Ruiz. He got whooped by Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz lost his mind. He became rich. And so you guys know that there was a point in time where Andy was starting to really show the money was getting to Andy. The fame was getting to Andy. These things that he wasn't aware of was getting to him. So it was a kind of interesting navigation for Andy Ruiz, because Andy at that point was like, you know what? I never got this type of money. I never been in this type of situation. I'm hanging out with Logan and Jake Paul. We're eating sushi off of naked chicks. We're going to strip clubs. We're doing cocaine. Yes, they're doing cocaine. They're doing all types of stuff. They're drinking, they're partying, they're going to the beach. You just seen the president of Mexico, el presidente de Mexico, right? He went there and he's seen him, met him, right? So Andy was on top of the world. And then Andy was like, look, I'm the heavyweight champion, not Anthony Joshua. I snatched those belts from him. I got those belts now. I'm not fighting in the UK because, they were going to fight in the UK. And Andy was like, no, I'm not going over there. I don't trust them. I don't trust none of that. Because needless to say, you remember when Dillian White had his adverse finding, Andy had something to say. And that's what started the Andy Ruiz, Dillian White rivalry, because Andy had something to say. It was like, see, I don't trust them over there. I'm not going to the UK. They take drugs. Right? I'm the champ. I have a say. But Andy forgot he signed a contract. But shout out to Al Heyman in the building, people. Al Heyman got him, $6 million more. So Andy ended up with 13 mil. I like that fight between Klitschko and Joshua. It was a good fight. Very good fight. Joshua has been a disappointment. Damn. But yeah. But meanwhile, AJ kind of did one video and then you didn't really see him again after that. And then, he just kind of went underground. And, I know he's seen and heard a lot. I don't care what people say. They've seen and heard a lot of things online. If you think those guys don't watch shit from these channels that we post, you're tripping. Because either they're going to reach out or they're going to get someone to reach out to you. I know that for a fact. It happens all the time. Jololoff beats Atoma. Wow. Strangeness. Klitschko fought like a beast in that AJ fight. Before I get to that, let me finish Ruiz. Ruiz then gains a lot of weight. Then he gets beat by Anthony Joshua in the rematch. But understand, that was that. You didn't see him till another year and a half in the ring. But Martin McCauley, bro, Martin McCauley, you beat one guy. Sure, you got a good check, but bro, you're not a champion or nothing. You just got a good payday. Those paydays are going to run out eventually. It's almost like winning mini lotteries. It's like winning the lottery, basically, within a fighter. But then it's different because you still have to pay everybody. Because when this lottery happens, you have to pay everybody from that lottery. So your winnings from that fight purse has to be cut into 4 or 5 different pieces. So a fighter actually just gets ravaged, bro. So now, strangeness. Klitschko fought like a beast in that AJ fight. The way he was coming up with the left hook and feinted it and caught him with an uppercut. If he was more aggressive, he would have got AJ out of there. He would have, and I didn't understand that. He gave that fight away. I had Vlad beating AJ because I liked AJ, but I still didn't know who he was, and I didn't think that him, with his lack of experience, could deal with Dr. Steelhammer. I'm like, there's no way that AJ is going to beat him, but it's still a good fight because AJ's this guy I just seen flatten Charles Martin like he wouldn't shit. I walk this earth like a god. AJ caught that boy, and then that's when I start realizing, like, well, wait a minute. How good is AJ? And at that time, AJ had that mindset. He had that kind of personality, that kind of like whatever personality like Moses Atoma, needless to say, has now. Right? So that's when you're like, cool. And he wasn't even like cocky about it. He was like, shit, hey, caught the dude with a good shot. What do you want from me? Big up England. Big up Sheffield. Big up Watford. Big up Watford, isn't it? Black Cloud. Truth be told, Usyk has only really beaten 3 good opponents at heavyweight. He needs to fight more guys before I can all-time heavyweights. Well, all-time great heavyweights. He's an all-time great. I don't think he's an all-time great heavyweight. I think he's an all-time great. Okay? Because saying he's an all-time great heavyweight is like saying, well, he was never a cruiserweight and he did nothing at cruiserweight. He was always a heavyweight. He wasn't always a heavyweight. Okay? Professionally. We're talking about professionals. Professionally now. And the things that he did, especially in that tournament, he did a lot. Most overrated champ ever. I don't think so. I think Vladimir Klitschko, I think what people need to understand, there's a difference between excitement and accomplishments in Vitaly, and Vladimir did both. Their accomplishments should be always acknowledged. Both Klitschko's. See, we were biased because either if you were from the UK or you were from the USA, we didn't like to see the Klitschko's anyway because they would always find a way to win. You fight one and you beat one, you got to fight the other. It was some contracts that we felt like it was almost like bullying. But you can't take away the accomplishments of the Klitschko's. I think that's unfair and it's definitely super biased. But what you could always say, they just weren't fun to watch. They just weren't. But like Joe here saying, oh, they were overrated. How the fuck were they overrated? They beat everyone or almost everyone, right? So, and they did it for a long time, for a very long time. See, the thing is, you can talk about how boring a fighter is. You can say that about Floyd Mayweather. Man, I can't stand Floyd. Floyd this, Floyd that. Floyd still whoop your ass. He still outpoints you. He still beats you. So you can't say that, oh, well, he's no good or he's overrated. Well, it depends on what argument what angle you're coming from. But to take away somebody's accomplishments, I think that's bullshit. I think, again, it may be coming from the fact that you don't like that person or that fighter, So there you go. Old Lewis beat a prime Vitali, same like Usyk Klitschko's was great in their era, but not as great, not the greatest ever. No, I don't think they're the greatest ever. I think they were, like you said, in their era. Vlad and Vitali dominated hard. They called it the Klitschko era, and it was the Klitschko era. It was definitely the Klitschko era. I would love to see Vladimir versus Claudius. That would be a good fight. I think Lewis probably would have got Vlad out because Vlad was, here's the thing about Vlad. Vlad was younger. The reality was Lennox Lewis retired. He got out of there. He I can't say he pulled Rocky Marciano, no. But he was going to retire anyway. But fighting Vlad, though, I think if Vlad could control the pace of the fight, it would be an interesting fight because he was younger, fresher. He wasn't as aggressive as his brother, but it would probably be one of those, grab and clinch type of fights until someone got caught. Kurt Anthony Joshua versus a prime Vitali Klitschko. Vitali would have destroyed AJ. He would have beat AJ. AJ would, but see, you have to understand though. The same thing applies to AJ. AJ may be whatever now, but AJ was an absolute beast back then. To call him underrated back then is like, obviously you didn't see the Vladimir Klitschko fight. You didn't see the Povetkin fight. You didn't even see the Andy Ruiz fight because those fights, we found out a lot about AJ with his temperament, but we also knew he had a limit. Everyone that I've seen pretty much does. Kurt have seen the racism directed at Dubois by the Ukrainians circulated for information saying Triple D said he dedicate his victory to Russia. I don't know. I never heard Daniel Dubois say that. But I never heard Daniel say that. But that does kind of sound like something that whoever told Triple D to say that about Joe Joyce's mom, that sounds like the same person that told Daniel Dubois to do some shit like that. So if he did repeat that from somebody that he heard that from, I think it was from the same person. I never heard that though. I never heard Daniel talk about politics when it came to Usyk and what was going on with his country in Russia. I never heard that at all. So, no, I never heard that. Vitali was very young when he got dropped in kickboxing. In kickbox. Pelly Raid knocked Vitali out cold. Okay. People are always going to hate boxers they don't like, but if you say out about who they like, they spit their dummy out. Kurt, I see a lot of people don't agree with what you say because you keep it real and they say how it is. And say, well, I mean, you have to say how it is, but you have to keep and take the emotion out of it. See what I've learned about having a platform like this. This is kind of like, it's either on or off. Last week, you had 3 times as many people in here because, the buzz from fighting and boxing. But if you're not a bandwagon hopper or someone that just like a fanboy of a certain popular fighter, you're not going to get people plowing in. It's just not going to work. It's not going to happen, and the algorithms are dictated by who watches what pretty much. So if this was I've noticed a lot of people, they respect what I say, but they won't watch they won't watch like they used to a few years ago, which is fine. Because what I noticed is I'm like, okay, there's a lot of AJ fans on here. Oh man, you know what? There's a lot of Tyson Fury fans on here. You know what? There's a lot of Wilder fans on here that don't like me. And it's like, okay, well, I want more of an overall audience than just fans of certain fighters, because once those fighters leave, your channel drops. So I understand what's happening to the channel. The people that are adding themselves and subscribing to my channel, they want to hear balanced news and info about all fighters, not just some, not just the Tyson Furies or the Anthony Joshuas or the Deontay fucking Wilders. We want to hear about Jaya Bataya. We want to hear about Joseph Parker. We want to hear about Derek Chisora. We want to hear about Daniel Dubois. We want to hear about everyone. Okay. Dmitry Bivol, Artur Beterbiev, David Benavidez, I missed the Tank issue. I didn't really do a Tank because the Tank has done that before. But everyone gets a shine, unless I feel that someone else has already done that. So there's no reason for me to regurgitate news that I've already seen someone do. So sometimes in some topics, I let other people just, do what they do. Bill Knows Boxing. What's up, brother? Counterpunch to you. Kurt, do you think Crawford can be undisputed at 154 if he wanted to? It's a good question. It's a very good question. Maybe. I think it would make more sense for him to fight at 154, but I think Crawford knew that, hey, I want to get this money, and plus I'm not going to stay this shape, this fit forever. And I got a good video coming about Terrence Crawford here after the live stream, so stay tuned. I may let it go today because I think I've done enough content today. But Abby Seedorf, hey, Kurt, Charles put Dubois in a mess against Usyk because he pushed the horses. Well, I mean, hey, I think he pushed the horses when they signed the contract, when they got out of the Joseph Parker fight. I think that. I mean, I think Daniel Dubois getting knocked out by Alexander Usyk is a result of karma. See, they did Joseph Parker like that. They skipped Joseph Parker. They ducked Joseph Parker because they didn't believe that they could beat Joseph Parker in the current condition that Dubois was in. And it wasn't nothing serious. They just no longer felt comfortable or confident that they could beat Joseph Parker. But what they did know is Alexander Usyk had interest in fighting Daniel Dubois. So how do you ensure that you get a fight with Alexander Usyk? You don't fight Joseph Parker. Easy. That's all. He was ducked. He pulled out of a fight that his people did no longer want. And then he got what he wanted, and then he got his ass whooped. We see the result. That's that. That's it. That's all it is. I mean, and I told you that would happen, but I also told you, like I'm going to tell you now, about that issue. I told you it would be a waste of time. It would be a waste of time to see Usyk beat Daniel Dubois again. Now, here's my surprise. Everybody's treating this shit like it was, oh my God, this is the best performance ever. Yes, I understand how he did it. It's how he did it. I get it. Just like everyone went ape shit when Tyson Fury stopped Deontay Wilder. And then they gave him more praise, needless to say, when he did it again. And I'm like, he already did it. So what are we really talking about? And people, oh, Kurt, you're hating. You don't like Tyson, do you? No, that's not the point. The point is you can't get overexcited for someone that did something twice that you've already seen them do the first fucking time. What are we, retards? What are we, insane? And I told you it'd be a waste of time because Alexander Usyk should be fighting someone else besides Daniel Dubois. Right? I said that. Now everybody acting like, oh, Kurt's a hater. No, I said that before he knocked out Daniel Dubois or beat Daniel Dubois. Hell, he still won. So guess what? We still got the same result. He beat Danny Dubois. So there was no reason to waste our fucking time watching Danny Dubois challenge Alexander Usyk for a belt that he gave up anyway. I think now that we can since we've kind of calmed down off the Usyk thing, this is the reality. You're talking about keeping it real. This is the realest it's going to ever get right here. Alexander Usyk beating Danny Dubois does it do anything for his legacy? I mean, it shouldn't. Some questions were answered. I will say that. But what did it really do? It just showed, hey, I can do the same thing. I already did. I can just do it again. So what? And then what? So there you go. Then it's left with fanboys cometh. There we go, the fanboys, the dick suckers, the dick riders, the bandwagon jumpers. These guys, let's jump on the bandwagon. Usyk doesn't have to do anything. Okay, really? Retire. Cool. Bryce Productions, what's up, brother? Counterpunch to you. I would have loved to see Usyk versus Parker, but I'm glad the controversy with Usyk and Dubois can finally be put to rest. But I don't think, you know what, for me personally, I could give a shit about what Don Charles and his son, a little troublemaker, ain't little, he's a big motherfucker. George Fox, all those guys and the whole team said, I don't care. Didn't we get enough of that shit with Deontay Wilder? See, all these things we're learning about controversies or accusations or, uproars about rumored things that happen. Oh, yeah, it was legal. I think, man, it was on the belt line. Bro, the referee ruled it that. And the thing that they should have been talking about, they didn't. So I'm not impressed with that shit. He was going to knock that boy out anyway, or he was going to beat him. Roy Jones Jr. said it best. Well, if he gonna fall from a jab, don't you think he's gonna fall from a backhand? He's gonna fall from an overhand left hook. So that's what it's gonna do. That's what he did. He wasn't gonna get up from that. He didn't get up from the jab. So why he gonna get up from the backhand? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I agree, Kurt. King Kurt. History has made Usyk. Okay. I disagree, Kurt. King Kurt. History was made in Usyk versus Triple D. It was the first time two towels were thrown in by the same trainer. Bro, that shit had me laughing when I read that. I did a video on it, man. Somebody was like, that motherfucker said everybody quit. One towel for him and one towel for us. Throw them all in. Man, I must have laughed. I was crying. And I just, let me do a video right then. You know what I mean? I don't want to fake laugh. I'm laughing at that shit right then, so I got to do it right then. That's why I was like that. That was funny, man. He threw two towels in. Good God, throw two, both in. He quit twice. This one was for the other fight. God, did you see that punch? Oh. That was funny though, bro. He hit Dubois. My uncle kept saying, man, his mouth is big. Damn, he got a big ass mouth. He got a big target. He got a mouth like a boot. Uncle see, he's like, he got a mouth like a boot. I was like, what? Look at his mouth. I was like, dude, this dude's hilarious. The last time the U.S. had an elite heavyweight in Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson era. Well, we got Joshua Edwards now, so we'll see how good he does. The Golden Boy fighter, Joshua Edwards. The final boss, Luca Mora. St. Don Moses is the only one from the UK capable of dominating the division since he was only fought with Vlad and Wilder. AJ could dominate a journeyman in Andy Ruiz. Kurt Parker fight could have been the perfect build up for Dubois before fighting Usyk, but they made the wrong choice. Yes, this is true. They did. Abby, that's exactly what I was trying to tell everyone. I was trying to tell everyone exactly that. Like, hey, you guys made a mistake. And I said that. And I said, well, that's what's going to happen. You have certain fights, and there's fights for reasons. They made a good decision of taking the Parker fight. I think the worst decision from them taking it. But then here's the thing. Hey, boot mouth. He got that. He got them. He got that Simpsons mouth. Man, there are reasons why though, but I do get it too, because the end result, like if you didn't think he was gonna beat Parker, what made you think he was gonna beat Usyk? They just did it for the money, and they're rich. Dubois should be. If I was Dubois, bro, I'd be flying to Brazil right now. Hell yeah, I'm gonna go get. I'm gonna go. You gonna catch Daniel Dubois at the Luamo, at the Quattro by Quattro, at the Club Help. Well, that's not around no more. A lot of those are not around no more. But yeah, dude, Rio, bro, I love Rio de Janeiro. Thing about Rio though, dude, I could talk about that for a freaking hour. But that's where Daniel needs to go. That's where Daniel needs to go. Nobody has seen the 70s and 90s fighters say Usyk is the GOAT. It's only people who envy those fighters who say Usyk is the GOAT, and they envy them because they are all black. Well, I don't even know about that. I mean, here's the thing. You can't say what people envy and why they envy that. The only thing you can do, Quan Big Guns, is think and examine yourself. Now, I'm quite sure that there are people that are biased for reasons unlike their ability to see what people can do in their performance level. In other words, they may be doing that because of that, but that doesn't mean that at all. That does not mean that. So for you to have that mindset is not to really fix the problem of good or talented versus untalented, or good versus good. So who's better physically? It's just now it becomes all political. But who cares? Because you're not going to ever find that out anyway. So that's just something to fuel the fire or to fuel the debate of something internally brewing within each and every one of us. Either you're racist or you're not. You know, what are your decisions or your reasons behind that? Only you know that. You know, just because you see someone that doesn't look like you say something about a fighter does not mean that they're saying it because of the reason you take them to say it. That's how you're taking it. So it's important. Don't pull the race card unless you know the facts. And this is how you find out, just to stay on to really find out how a person feels, to find out if they're biased or not. I think that's more important, because if you know there's some bias, there's some angle where a person doesn't like a fighter, this is what you do. Hear someone say something like, Lennox Lewis was overrated. The question you ask yourself is, okay, tell me how. Go. Tell me how. Go. Just tell me how he's overrated. If they can't tell you nothing about it, and everything that comes out of their mouth is an opinion, oh man, he just sucks as a fighter, man. He just sucks, man. He ain't no good. He just sucks. That is not proving that he's overrated. That's not proving that he's overrated. That's just proving that you don't like him. That's also just proving that you have bias against that person. That's what that means, Quan Big Guns. You see what I'm saying? So when you say things like that, you have to have evidence behind that. So to hear someone say something, now, if he had a breakdown like, oh, nah, the way he brought his hands, you know, the fights that he had, you know, that really was fabricated because of X, Y, Z, right? That's different. Because now he's explaining you why he feels what he said based on what he said. He's giving you reason for rhyme. This is the reason why I said what I said. Not because I don't like him or he's this or that or, you know, he's a runner. Because this is what I'm noticing about people, though. There are codes or certain indications, and I know what you mean, when people do say shit like, oh man, Terrence Crawford, he's a runner. Most people that say that are casuals, biased because of racism, are prejudiced, right? In that category. Because it's like a code word, It's like saying, oh, he's a thug. No, you're not really trying to say that, are you? You're not trying to say he's a thug at all. You're trying to say something else, But no, I mean, you have these keywords. Oh, he's a runner. Oh, you just don't like those type of fighters, Or maybe you don't like the fact that they're able to dominate the fighters that you like with the style that you like based on what they're doing. You see what I'm saying? Why do you think people really hated the Klitschkos? I mean, really hated the Klitschkos. You could say, well, their style. That's why I didn't like them. I had nothing to do with the fucking Ukraine. Nothing to do with them being from another country. That had nothing to do with it. I didn't like the Klitschkos because they were able to use that boring ass jab and grab, more than likely Vlad, but Vitaly did it too, being the size that they were and still able to win. I hated that. Yeah. Watching Vladimir Klitschko versus Brian Jennings, I hated watching that fight because Brian Jennings was a tough, hard Philly fighter. And he fought Vlad and he lost. He was 19-0 at the time. He lost to Vladimir Klitschko. People booed that shit because it stunk. Not because he was from the Ukraine, but there's some people didn't like the fact that, and they would more than likely be older, right? That wouldn't like Vladimir Klitschko because he wasn't American. You see what I mean? There's a difference. See, a lot of times people don't like you just because you're not from where they are from. Oh, I don't like him. He's from the USSR. The USSR? Dude, how old are you? 95? You got to be up there to say some shit like that. But that's how people, that's what people said. Because remember, there was a prejudice against people from Eastern Europe. You see what I'm saying? So you have to be careful. And a lot of times it wasn't the fact that they didn't like the Klitschkos because of the style. They didn't like the Klitschkos because they were from Eastern Europe. And we know that's a fact. We know there's people that think like that. So to pretend it doesn't exist is one thing. But to give it power or to empower it is another. See, we base it off facts, not based off of the reality of the possibility of somebody being biased because of racism, because of prejudice. Because if that's the case, for one, I don't want to support anybody on here because of that. You know what I mean? You can be biased, but if the minute you let out the bag that I don't like him because of the way he fucking looks, that has nothing to do with him. People, you need to understand that. If you don't like a black dude because he's black, what the fuck could he do about it? If you don't like a white guy because he's white, what are you going to do about it? What can he do about that? How can he do that to appease you? What can you do? There's nothing you can do. I mean, you don't like me because I'm a white guy. Okay, I can't do nothing about that. That's how I was. What do you want me? What do you want me to do? Put on fucking makeup? What do you want? What want me to put on a wig? What? I mean, that's what I don't understand about racism. Like, okay, you can't do anything about that. Now, how people act is a totally different thing. You see what I mean? That's different because that's your conduct. That's your character, not the way you look. And a lot of people feel that way. And then, needless to say, we're in a sport that thrives off that. People thrive off that shit. People love some people, they like that whole idea. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Blue Eyes, what's going on with Shaking Toots? Kurt, do you think about heavyweight prospect Nelvi Tiafak from Germany? I never heard of him, but I have now. Boom. Let's go. Nelvi Tiafak from Germany. Well, if you look at Sammy Sosa, you can do something about it, kind of. El Dominicano, qué pena. Wow. This guy. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess you could. I guess you could. And I'm not Dominican, but I can tell you there that is, but that proves my point. That just that just shows you that that's sad. You know what I mean? Let's put it this way then. You shouldn't want to change yourself based on how other people feel about you. Shit. Because I'm like, Sammy Sosa looked like Hector Macho Camacho. I'm like, dude, he turned into Hector Macho Camacho over here. If you look at Hector Camacho, that's like, I guess, the ideal, the light-skinned, more Latino, But yeah, it's crazy stuff. People who said Usyk doesn't need to fight anymore said the same about Fury. Ooh. Bill knows boxing, counterpunch to you. That is so true. People said that Usyk doesn't need to fight anyone. That they said the same about Fury. They said the same about Fury. They said that. You don't have to fight anyone. He's already the best. Why is he going to fight Usyk? Usyk can't beat him. He's too small. Remember that shit? You remember that? Oh, yeah. You should. You should remember that. Because, I mean, that's what made people dislike Fury fans. That's what made me dislike Fury fans. Because I was like, you know what? These guys are delusional fans. And then what it is, they don't want that fight with Usyk. They wanted a fight with AJ because they knew Tyson Fury had a better chance of beating AJ. Some people didn't want that. AJ suffered rejection, harassment, and jealousy, even by former champions like Lennox Lewis. Uh-oh. Lewis will give everybody the edge against AJ. Well, yeah, but see, that didn't. Michael Jobert, you do understand why. Do you guys know why Lennox Lewis doesn't like AJ? I ain't gonna lie, I thought Usyk was just a middleweight. I didn't. Because what I seen evidence of Usyk winning and beating someone like Tyson Fury, so it was more believable, and I believed it. But I believed it not because I disliked Tyson. I believed it because I've seen Tyson struggle with smaller fighters. I believed it because I seen Steve Cunningham show us how to beat and showed us what to do with bigger fighters like Tyson. You know what I mean? So seeing is believing. If you see, oh shit, wait a minute, Steve is doing a good job with Tyson. Then he dropped his ass. A little dude like that dropping Tyson Fury. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. What's with all this? Tyson has the ability to recover. He does have a good rehabilitation, recovery factor. He does have that. You got to give it to Tyson. You hit Tyson, Tyson's going to recover. He can. It takes some time, but he's a warrior in that regard. He's a fighting man, right? In that regard. But yeah, when I seen Steve do it, I knew Alexander Usyk will beat him. Especially when he beat Joshua twice. And I knew, I was like, you know what? Tyson Fury, the WBC ain't going to make Tyson do shit. And they didn't, right? So we knew there was going to be a time where Tyson will have to be forced to fight Usyk. And if he don't, he'll duck. And he did both. He ducked him as long as he could. And then he eventually had to fight him. Right? He ducked him as long as he could. But, you know what I mean? He did duck him. He bullshitted him. He played him. He fucked up the formation. He held that damn WBC for hostage. He fought whoever he wanted to fight. He fought MMA guys that never fought a day of boxing in their life. He did whatever he wanted to do with the WBC, but eventually he had to fight Usyk. And I figured, you know what? And it gave Usyk momentum because I'm thinking, you know what, people were starting to wake up because guys like me was calling that shit out because I was like, you know something? This ain't right. And I know for a fact that Alexander Usyk now will beat Tyson Fury, and I think Tyson Fury knows. I think Tyson knew that, hey, Usyk will more than likely give me problems with the style that he has. But I don't really think he realized that until he got hit with and by Alexander Usyk. Damn, this dude that's 220 pounds can actually thump a bit, can he? And Tyson found that out. Tyson found out, like, hey, this guy can hurt me. He found that out, like, oh shit. And round 9, he knew, okay, well, I'm dealing with somebody that not only is fast, quick, and is a lot smaller than I am. This motherfucker's strong and he can punch too, and he can hurt me. You know, so yeah, refusing Lewis got AJ blackballed. No, it didn't. It didn't get him blackballed because Lewis had nothing to do with the negotiations with Deontay Wilder besides have his own opinion. But I'll tell you this, he hurt Lewis's feelings. And I kind of feel Lewis on that. You look back at that. Lennox Lewis tried to congratulate AJ and then they wouldn't let him in like they were better than fucking people. You don't do that to a legend. Now, is it more disrespectful like a Belonga throwing panties at Oscar De La Hoya? No, but it is disrespectful. Because it wasn't like Lennox Lewis and AJ it was like this new Lennox. No, or I'm competing with Lennox. No. They had a relationship at one point, and the relationship was supposed to be pleasant. Okay, so Lennox Lewis and AJ didn't supposed to have what we seen. I think Lennox started popping off because Lennox felt disrespected when AJ knocked out Vladimir Klitschko. Lennox Lewis was there and he wanted to congratulate AJ on his victory against Vlad. They could have made a bond, if you think about it, between Brits because Lennox beat Vitaly and he beat Vlad. Right? So that could have brought them together in familiarity, but it did not. What it did was AJ, because they deny it, but I don't think Lennox would lie about that. I don't think he would lie about that. I don't think Lennox Lewis would sit there and say, well, he did this. And no, Lennox was mad. Lennox was disappointed because AJ did bullshit him. He didn't really give him an answer when he invited him to Jamaica. And he offered him to be like, he wanted him to fight on the Al Heyman cards. He wanted to bring him to America. He wanted to do, he believed that AJ was good enough to do what he did in America. AJ instead went back to Matchroom with Eddie and signed with them. Was it a bad choice? Not necessarily, but that was strike one. Strike two was when AJ did what he did and, or refused, or his people refused Lennox Lewis not coming into the dressing room to congratulate him, to show his respects. Like, who the fuck does that? You know how many people do that? Like ex-fighters that are able to walk back and, hey, I'm Lennox Lewis, motherfucker, let me in. He did it with Tyson Fury when he beat Tyson Fury. When Tyson Fury beat like Wilder, he was there with Tyson Fury. He was there to see, you know what I mean? He was, you've seen Lennox Lewis go in the dressing room of other fighters, so why couldn't he do it with AJ? That's what I'm saying, people. So, I can understand Lennox Lewis by that regard. So that's when the trash talk started in 18 after that. So it is what it is. Lewis wanted Joshua to step out of the UK comfort zone, and Joshua wanted to stay under Matchroom's protection policy. I don't think if that was the case, Black Cloud, he would have done that. He would have done that. He wanted to fight in Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean? And because, they had the kickoff party in New York. AJ had leniency. He didn't do what people wanted him to do all the time. That's why he wouldn't be AJ if that was the case. Quan, small guns, Usyk would school Lewis. Shit. I don't know about that shit. See, that's that bullshit right there. Oh, he would school Lewis. Based on what? What have you found out about Lewis that gives you the idea that he could be schooled like that? Not gonna understand you said something like Wilder. We've already seen him school AJ, but AJ ain't Lennox Lewis. More importantly, Lennox Lewis ain't AJ. He fought a 25-1 underdog at the Garden that was a gimme. That Juice loss. Lewis ducked a rematch with Klitschko. But what people don't understand about Andy Ruiz, you think Andy Ruiz having only one loss was he was just fat. And this is the reality of everything, including involving Andy. People look at that as such an upset. I'm going to tell you why. Because Andy Ruiz is fat. He's fat. He's not an ideal heavyweight. The image of a heavyweight, you don't think of Andy Ruiz. You think of Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, Anthony Joshua. You don't think of Andy Ruiz. And Andy Ruiz was that's what people looked at. A short, fat dude beating a tall, 6'6", chiseled, muscled up motherfucker. That's hilarious. That's hilarious right there. That's hilarious all by itself. Joshua would have so much would be so much better if he started boxing early when to the USA. Who knows? But I can tell you this, Hoffa, he did say that boxing was hard over there. And you know something, maybe Anthony Joshua at the time when he went to Derek James, maybe he was at that age because he was like, what, 34, 33, 34 years old? Maybe he wasn't really the fighter. He didn't have that fire. So I think he didn't go back to the U.S. I don't think it had anything to do with location at all. I think it had everything to do with the inability to keep doing that shit. Maybe you're right, Hoffa. Maybe Hoffi's right. Maybe Hoffi's like, you know what? Maybe, because he was you didn't have to twist his arm to go with Ben Davis and people. You didn't have to do that shit long. And he went. He went quick. And there was no talks about him going back to Derek James. And because I think Derek James pushed his fighters a lot more. Because Derek James is more physical, but then Derek James, I think he submitted to Derek James more than he did with Robert Garcia. Robert Garcia had to bend his own coaching strategies for AJ, I feel. Because he said it. He said I wanted to leave. I didn't like the way his team was trying to make me do shit. I'm the coach, motherfucker. So I'm over here to show him how it goes and how it's done. You see what I mean? That's why like AJ was fighting someone like Teddy Atlas. You know what I mean? Like with someone like Teddy Atlas training with him. Yeah. Maybe he should have been younger. The U.S. couldn't have give AJ a chin. But that's okay. Lewis didn't duck a rematch with Klitschko. Lewis had come out of retirement just to fight Klitschko and didn't want to get back in the ring. Besides that one fight, Klitschko was in his prime. Lewis was not. Lennox Lewis is a beast. But back to AJ. AJ should, I don't, fighting Tony Yoka is safe, but I think it's a waste of time. But it wouldn't be, I'm not pissed off, but then I'm not impressed either. The late, great Emmanuel Stewart would have went upside AJ's head with a spit bucket out of frustration. I mean, he would have cussed him out. Him, Ronnie Shields, you know what I mean? But Ronnie Shields is not the dude that he used to be. He's not the dude that he used to be, like as far as aggressiveness. Not saying he's not a good trainer no more. He's just not aggressive as he used to be. You know what I mean? So, he was off the chain back in the day. Him and David Tua, they split up. David Tua was too much of a pussycat for Ronnie Shields. Ronnie Shields was like, dude, I need somebody like, he used to train Mike Tyson, so he knew what and how to train someone. But it's like, dude, you got to show me something. David Tua was just, David had a good chin and all that, but he just did not have that killer instinct. He didn't. Now, he would jump on you if he felt you were hurt, but he didn't have that go get 'em attitude. He had that if I catch you attitude. That's different. That means if something happens for me, if I happen to land, okay, that's one thing. But if I don't land, I'm not gonna make myself land. I'm not gonna take the initiative. Rest in peace, Manny Stewart. That man would cuss you out quick. Yeah, he would. Man, stop all that up and down shit, man, and get him in there, man. All that up and down shit. Get him in there, man. Knock him out. You got 3 minutes. Ronnie Shields wasn't with that lazy BS. No, he wasn't. Man, Manny Emanuel, man, I was listening to I was about to say Phil Hartman. Lampley. Jim Lampley was, I don't know why I thought that. Toy Story. No. Jim Lampley was talking about Manny, and he was he was talking about some good shit about Manny, man. It was great. You guys got to check out that interview with Jim Lampley. That was cool. I think Parker is the most overrated boxer. He beat Wilder coming off a year layoff, arguably a lot to Zhang. Beat Bakali, was given the 24-hour notice. Well, we'll see. I don't think that about Parker at all. I just think they're not giving Parker opportunities. So I think it's unfair to say, oh, he's overrated, but they haven't given Parker opportunities. I mean, everything they've given him, he's come up. He's won. I think you need to understand that. I know you're trying to break down, well, this actually happened or that actually happened when he did this and when he fought that guy. But understand, he beat all of those guys. He beat everyone from 2023 to 2024 and 2025. So for 3 years, he's been undefeated since he got beat by Joe Joyce. And I think that's worth mentioning. Okay. Jim Lampley is back on TV after your interview. Good. I know he was on Joe Rogan like a couple days after that. So that was good. I love Joe Parker, but his form flatters him big time, in my opinion. He lost the Joyce. Yeah, he lost to Joe Joyce. He did, yeah. But no, I mean, Anthony Joshua, I don't think he should retire. And if so, I would like Anthony Joshua to fight people in his own generation. Fight Tyson Fury. Sure, that's a fight that he could fight. Fight Jarrell Miller or Deontay Wilder. I don't think that there's any room for anybody else to really come about. You know what I'm saying? And if so, why? Why are we having these fights? Kurt, context matters. Yeah. Parker has been in the right fights at the right time. Parker's a new man since Andy Lee. Check out how they train. Well, that has to be seen. Because they said the same thing about Don Charles and Daniel Dubois too. So that's a decent. Caballo much more deserving, in my opinion. People are going to avoid that fight like the Black Plague, the Spanish flu, the coronavirus 2002. Bars. Parker should rematch Joyce. Nah, I don't think that should. I mean, if he wanted to, sure. You know what I mean? That would be a good fight for him, but because Joyce will take that shit. You know what I mean? And it would be a good fight because Joyce would try to show him like, look, motherfucker, I ain't going nowhere. And I think people I think people are disrespecting Joe Joyce too. Yes, he got beat by Zhang. Zhang's a very powerful puncher. He should have let Zhang linger out of the rounds. I think the Joe Joyce now would beat Zhang. Better yet, how about Zhang versus Joyce 3? And I think what will happen with Zhang and Joyce 3, Joyce now knows how to protect himself. He knows void big shots. Yes, he got caught by Derek Chisora, but he was doing pretty good in the Hrgovic fight. You know? At the Virgin, I like Parker. Get my sack out of your mouth. Virgin? Who's the Virgin? I'm telling you, if Usyk doesn't rematch Curry, it will be Moses Atoma that will want his last fight with. You're right, Kurt. Joe Joyce could take out Zhang now. Yeah, I mean, because what happens is Joyce thought he was the fucking juggernaut. He actually thought he was the Jim Lee Marvel character. I am the juggernaut. And thought that he could just take shit. That's what he thought he could do. You can't do that shit in real life. This ain't Marvel. This ain't Hasbro. Shit, this ain't a movie. This ain't a stunt sequence. This ain't fight choreography, motherfucker. This is real fighting. You will get your head knocked off by the right person, and the right person did exactly that, didn't they? Zhang still KOs Joyce. Oh man, it isn't hating Parker. It is context. Joyce would KO Allen and Fisher, so he is not done. Nah, man, it just depends on who he fights. It depends on who he fights. You know. Does anybody really think Usyk can get up for his final fight being against Parker? No, I don't think it's his final fight, but who gives a shit? If he's not, understand, it's not about motivation with Alexander Usyk. It's about discipline. So if he can't get up, that's on him. That's nobody else's fault. Stop trying to make excuses for fighters, man. Fighters fight their own fight. You can't make anyone motivated for anything. So don't use it as an excuse. The better man just won that night based on how hard and how much they wanted it. Okay, that's that. Usyk is about legacy now. Let's hope so. Usyk is ready for a good for another 4 years. I would like to see him for another 4 years fight the right fights, not just linger and hang around. Fuck that. Nah, go home. Make more babies. You're rich. I would make 2 more babies. I was Usyk. His wife's fine. So yeah, go home and make more babies with your beautiful wife and enjoy your life. Bars. Atoma is more gifted than Usyk, and he is only 19. Atoma will probably be better than Usyk. We'll see. That I gotta see. Because Moses then has to show us that he's better than Usyk. Then we have to have that Tyson Fury type fight with Moses too, right? Alex, hello. I saw a reaction on Usyk's face when Parker approached him in the ring. That look was the look you give your ex when you don't give a shit. I must relax now. I must relax. I remember that shit. I had it on, yeah. I don't know why I didn't do a video. Man, let me tell you guys something. I do so many videos that it's like videos that I forget. Sometimes videos I forget to post. I'm like, damn, I forgot to post this video. Not if they put Atoma against Usyk. Usyk will want Atoma's name on his record to further compliment his lacking in depth heavyweight resume, and I agree. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, back to AJ in closing, guys. You know, it's been a couple hours, almost 2 hours from being live. I think AJ should just fight people in his, I think retirement wouldn't be too bad for him, because who wants someone that's not hungry if he's not hungry no more? But I do think to give AJ the benefit of the doubt that, hey, let's see what he does in his next fight. Let's see who he picks in his next fight determines how much he wants to fight. Because I think that all determines on the challenge and the opposition, right? So let's see what he does in his next fight. Let's see who he fights in his next fight. Let's see how he performs in his next fight. And I think AJ should be ready for whatever comes. But I hope the knockout did something for him if he intends on furthering his career. And if he doesn't, I just think he's around for a couple more paydays and that's a wrap. And his stock will drop, but his banking account won't. But anyway, you guys, love you guys. Be blessed on this. What is it? Is this Tuesday? I will be back tomorrow for another live stream. We have another topic tomorrow coming soon to you guys. But until then, be blessed, be safe, and everyone has been counterpunched. Peace.